Good morning, this is Sarah at the Wyoming State Library. I'm going to talk to you today about the Wyoming Talking Books program. For some of you this will be review, but I also want to go over some new content that the State Library has put out to help libraries and organizations make it easier to promote this wonderful service. So I'll try not to get too bogged down in all of the details because I do know that it'll be review for some of you, but for those of you that aren't familiar with the program, I want to make sure that you're aware of how it all works as well. So the Talking Book program is a free library service for the print disabled, and that is blind and low vision, people with a physical disability that makes it uncomfortable to read a book, and people with organic reading disabilities, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that exactly means. We have here at the State Library created a website with sort of all the go-to information that you need for this program, and I'd like you to become familiar with this website to educate yourself if you work in a school or a library or another organization that might serve folks who could benefit from this service, and then as a great place to point patrons and clients to for information on the program. So the website is wyomingtalkingbooks.org, and you can't apply for the service from here, but because there currently is no online application, but all of the information and the information I'm going to share with you today is going to be here. So it's a good referral point to get patrons and clients too. The one thing that you can do though is print off an application, and that's going to be up to you. You may just be helping somebody and want to run off an application for them to help get them started, or if you have space in your library or facility, you may want to print off multiple copies so that it's something that you have available there for folks. The program, as I said, is a free service, and it's available for all Wyoming residents. And the thing is that it's actually a program that's available nationwide, and every state has what we call a talking book library or a library for the blind, except Wyoming. And so that's another reason why we created this website, because there's a few different agencies involved in providing this service and can get a little confusing. So we wanted to make this sort of the one-stop shop for information on the program, since there's all these different phone numbers and emails and websites to keep track. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But the reason it's a national program is because it's part of a larger service out of the Library of Congress National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. And this is another good background resource for you to review. There's some good information for patrons here, but I find it to just be better background historical information, but feel free to review this content as well. But it will give you a little bit of history of how this service came to develop on a national level, and then also if you ever talk with folks who live in other states, maybe they're just they vacation in Wyoming or whatever it might be, you will get directory information to the services in their particular state. So this is a good resource to review. So I want to just talk quickly about what the service actually is, and then we'll get into some other details. If you're eligible for the service, once you apply, what you get is a digital talking book machine, and I have sort of a small picture here. This black machine in the middle of the screen is what we call a digital talking book machine, and this will get sent to you pretty quickly after you apply for the service, or a patron applies for the service. And this plays our digital talking books. Again, also sort of small picture, so I do apologize there. The digital books come in what I like to think of as an oversized flash drive, and it's a thin plastic cartridge, a little bit smaller than a cassette, and it fits into the front of the machine, and then there are whole books, and in some cases more than one book on each cartridge. And the thing that sometimes library staff do ask is, well, what's the difference from the books on CD we have in the library, or the net library audiobooks that we have available through our database subscriptions. And I think that's a very fair question, and sometimes that's the question that patrons have too. But you might find that as you get to know your patrons well, that maybe they don't come to the library as often. Maybe they've listened to all of the audiobooks, read all of the large print. And the reason for that is we're limited in the regular library world of what we can acquire on audio, because we can acquire the only thing we can acquire is those things which are commercially produced. And the only things that are commercially produced are going to be your bestseller fiction, some of the bestseller nonfiction, your biographies, some history things, maybe some classics, and some of those materials that are in the public domain. But you're not going to find a collection comparable to what we have in our print collection on audio. And so what's really special about this program is that it comes through a piece of legislation that says all copyrighted material must be available in an accessible format. And think for a moment, is a standard print, and by that I mean the regular font that most print books are printed in, is that accessible to all people? And the answer is no. So what the Talking Book program does is it makes all, and I shouldn't say all, but most copyrighted material available in a recorded format. It's still kind of like we always say, we can't own every book in the world. The Talking Book program can't record every book in the world, but they have collection development teams, just as regular libraries do, to determine what materials are best to be recorded. And also just as we do in public libraries and academic libraries, taking patron requests in mind when it comes to recording materials. Additionally, also in considering format, materials are also printed in Braille as well. The Braille collection is not as large as the recorded book collection, but again, collection development teams and patron input is always kept in mind when determining what books should be available in Braille. So this is, again, the Talking Book machine and your talking books. And what's great is that they get sent through the mail, and everything is stamped free matter for the blind or handicap. And when patrons receive the material, they'll see that information is pre-stamped, and they can keep the machine for as long as they choose to have the service, which they can have it for life. And the books get circulated through the mail free as well. So when they're done listening to a book, there's a postcard with the library's address, and they shoot it back in the mail and can get more books. So it's a really nice, easy breezy way to get the service going. So let's go back to the application really quick, and I'll talk about those eligibility requirements again. As I said, it's available for folks who are legally blind or can't see well enough to read regular print comfortably, and that's regardless of corrective eyewear. Physical limitations that prevent them from holding books or turning pages, and this can be a variety of injuries or accidents or lifelong disability. The one that comes most to mind usually is someone with multiple sclerosis, but there are a variety of other conditions that could cause this. And this also doesn't mean it's available for everybody who's in a wheelchair. It does need to be a mobility issue that causes discomfort in holding a standard book. And then also available for people with reading disabilities. And this is where it gets a little tricky. We say reading disabilities due to an organic dysfunction. And this is one of those things that can also be a variety of things, but we differentiate this from a reading disability due to an emotional disability or illiteracy, or not being able to read due to speaking or reading a different language. So visual, physical, and reading disabilities, that's who's eligible for the service. I want to look quickly at the application, and just something to know, if you do direct patrons to this website, there's a link for the application, both under this link that I clicked on, who can apply, and then there's also the link that says application. As I mentioned, the program, you cannot currently sign up for the service online, and so this application is a PDF file and it does need to be printed out. Now this is also a good time to talk about which agencies are involved in providing the service, because there's a lot of different contacts on this application. The application process starts at the Wyoming Department of Education Services for the Visually Impaired. Their main office is in Riverton, but they do have regional offices around the state. And then they process the application, and they are also the ones who maintain the machines, those digital players I showed you previously. They maintain the machines here within Wyoming. So they'll process the application, they'll get the patron sent out a digital talking book machine, and then they kick the information over to the Utah State Library for the Utah State Library Program for the Blind and Disabled. And this will become the patron's library. This is where there are library staff, readers, advisors, and wonderful folks who get those books, Braille books, large print, and talking books out to the folks in Wyoming, as well as Utah, of course. So the application does start in Wyoming. Sometimes it happens that a patron is already aware that the service occurs out of Utah, and Utah will get the application. The Services for the Visually Impaired, which I may also refer to as SVI, and the folks in Utah work together to get those logistics hammered out. When you do print out the application, there are a few extra pages, but do keep in mind that this seemingly blank page acts as an envelope. You can see in the upper right corner it's stamped "Free Matter for the Blind and Disabled." So this is what you can fold the application up into once everything's completed. I won't go over, I'll just kind of scroll quickly through here. One thing that is mentioned on the application is if you to check off if you want a digital talking book player or a cassette player. The information that I put on the website and that I've been talking about so far, I don't refer to the cassette player. The National Library Service has stopped recording books on cassette, but there are still volumes and volumes of books on cassette. But all of the newer titles, and they're starting to work retroactively in recording the older titles in digital format. So I recommend that the patron just starts out with the digital player. It's small, it's lightweight, it's not hard to use. The cassette player is not either. But at a later time, if they find there's older titles they enjoy and are missing, they can call SVI, Services for Visually Impaired, and request a cassette player. But those are slowly being phased out. So I recommend starting with the digital player. I am going to scroll past most of this. Also, I've been mentioning books, but magazines are available. I always forget to mention that, and I think that, and as a magazine reader myself, I can't believe I forget to mention that, because there are over 70 magazine titles available, again, mostly in recorded format, but there are also magazines in Braille and a few in large print. You don't sign up for those right on the application, but you can indicate if you're interested, and then you can get a catalog of what magazine titles are available once you're formally set up. We've talked a few times now about who is eligible for the service, and that is the final page of the application. It goes over in greater detail those eligibility requirements. And again, because this comes out of a piece of legislation that all of this material is available in an accessible format, it's not available for those of us who can read standard print. So again, we talked about any one of us can get audiobooks at the bookstore, the library, the downloadables that are available through NetLibrary or iTunes or whatever. But we're not going to find how to fix your computer on audio. Those books are going to have been recorded in an accessible format for the folks who are eligible for this service. So it's not just a matter of saying this is the disability I have. The application does need to be certified by what we call a certifying authority. Now, in the case of eligibility due to visual or physical disability, quite a few different healthcare practitioners can sign off on the application. Obviously, doctors, nurses, and eye doctors, physical therapists, rehabilitation staff, staff at nursing homes. But for eligibility due to a reading disability, the application may only be signed by an MD or DO, that is a medical doctor or doctor of osteopathy. And these applications do need to be submitted to the Services for the Visually Impaired Department with an original signature. It can't be a photocopy, and it can't be a stamp, as some doctors will sometimes stamp their prescription pads. So a little bit of paperwork and legwork that a patron does have to do at the get-go, but once those pieces are all done, everything else is smooth sailing. I want to talk quickly about the service is available for all ages, but I want to talk quickly about those students in K-12 in a K-12 environment who are eligible for the service. Again, we think of students as possibly being diagnosed with a learning disability, so we think reading disability, but again, if they have low vision or physical disabilities. So our younger populations who are eligible for the service. In Wyoming, there is not one centralized resource center for material in different formats and material for students with disabilities. Each district takes care of how they provide services for students with disabilities or reading disabilities. And additionally, when you get down to that school level, there may be different requirements for different disabilities. So students who are blind or low vision may have access to resources that students who have reading disabilities do not, and vice versa. So if you work in a school or you do outreach to schools, you want, for school material particularly, you want to find out how the school district works with those needs. At the University of Wyoming, there's the WIND, the Wyoming Institute for Disabilities, and they provide some transcription services doing material in Braille. Not sure about recorded offhand. Some of the school districts work with them. Some of the school districts have received grant monies and can get material from the American Printing House from the blind. So it really depends on the community that you're in. And I'm speaking there specifically about school material. But remember, again, anyone of all ages who is eligible for this service, which then the student can sign up and have access to material that would be good for a book report. Your fiction titles, easy reader titles if they're younger, nonfiction titles, all about tigers for their biology report on tigers. Again, material that you're not necessarily going to find in the downloadables and audiobooks that regular libraries carry. Just as most libraries don't usually collect textbooks, neither does the Talking Books program. But there is another service, and this is again why I say you want to start with your school district to find out what they do to provide textbooks and school material in an accessible format. But there is another service called Learning Ally, and it was previously called Recordings for the Blind and Dyslexic, and there may be resource teachers in your school district who are familiar with that. And they have a library somewhat comparable to what the Talking Book program has, but they also have textbooks available in accessible formats. They do have, their membership had been free for a while, but my understanding is their grant is going away, so there is a membership fee. You would want to have patrons review the information at learningally.org for more information on membership fees. But the nice thing about this program is that if they sign up for the Talking Books program for free and get that digital player, the material that's recorded at Learning Ally works with that digital player. So then they don't, because there are also commercial players available, which I did not mention, and that can be a personal choice if someone has the resources to acquire a commercial player. But starting with Talking Books gets you a lot of material for free that then can work with other programs that are available. So that's just a note about students, and I mentioned K-12, but this, of course, college students, independent researchers, certainly there's other folks out there other than just the youth of our communities that need textbooks and other research material. So on this website, again, because I wanted to make this a one-stop shop for information on the program, under contacts, and it's actually mentioned in a few different pages on the website, I have the contacts for both the Wyoming Department of Education Services for the Visually Impaired and Utah State Library Program for the Blind and Disabled. Again, I know there are some of you out there who are familiar with this program previously, and you may have relationships with the regional offices of SVI in your communities. Open that up here real quick. On their website, you can find out where there are other SVI offices in the state and what counties they cover. And if you have relationships with those offices, certainly you can contact them or have patrons contact them directly. So if you're in Natrona, Converse, or Fremont counties, you can have them connect with Leo. That's actually the Riverton office, so that was a bad example because the main office is Riverton, excuse me. But you get my point. But the main office is in Riverton, and there's other folks there other than Leo that can help patrons with the application and with machine issues. But the regional offices are out there because in addition to the Talking Books program, Services for the Visually Impaired helps with assisted and accessible living tools. They perhaps will connect a user with training for using a cane or guide animals and a variety of other living and healthcare needs for folks with visual disabilities. Again, their other services, though, do have a different requirement of visual acuity than that is, for lack of a better word, stricter than the eligibility requirements for the Talking Book program. So if you're only interested in the Talking Book program, then you can just make that a note of that. They might contact you if there's any other questions about your application or whatever, or to offer you other services, but you can just say, I'm interested in the library program. But just know that is a resource for Wyoming residents with visual disabilities. Once the patron is set up, the Utah State Library Program for the Blind and Disabled does become their library. And the way to get service, there's so many options, and that's what I love about it. There, you can call and talk to library staff. You can email. There is, once you're set up, you can get a logon and password for an online account. You can order books online. There is also a downloadable program that has the same library available in downloadable format, which can be listened on the digital talking book machine or other electronic devices. So I want to talk about this website and some other material. Oh, I'm sorry, I knew there's one other thing with contacts. You'll notice that my information and the state library's information is nowhere on this website. And the reason for that is that the state library is acting as sort of a silent partner in this program. We're helping the Department of Ed, Services for the Visually Impaired, promote this service. We want to get the information out to organizations, educate library staff and school staff on the program. For those of you familiar with the program has not changed in any way. People getting the service in Wyoming love it and are happy with it, but we know that there's many more folks who could be getting the service, and so we want to help Utah and the Department of Ed get the word out on this program. If you have questions, you can contact me. My email is sara.francis@wyo.gov. Pardon me. You can also get that on the State Library website. You can, libraries, I don't mind answering questions from library staff and organizations. I also, of course, don't mind helping patrons, but the reason I would rather not have patrons direct it toward the State Library is because we then become just another step that's not actually directly helping them. I'm just going to kick them over to the application and kick them on to the services for the visually impaired, so it just becomes another level that I'd rather not have them have to deal with in what should be a very easy process. So avoid directing patrons toward the State Library for information, but certainly if they end up here, we're going to help them. But that's why the State Library is not referred to on this website. So I did just want to clarify that as well. Another nice thing about this website, as you're looking at your individual outreach efforts, or as you're maybe sharing this with patrons who might then go on and share it with other folks, is we have a few informational videos. And these are just quick 4 and 5 minute videos going over the same stuff I've just talked with you for the last half hour. This one that starts with what do you get, that's actually not the first page of that video, but it's just a little overview. Here's what the service is, here's who's eligible, and here's what you get. And the second one goes into a little bit more detail, walking through those different pages of the application, how to apply, who to send it to, and reviewing those eligibility requirements. So I invite you in your outreach efforts, if you visit the senior center or connect with a group like the Rotary Club, you can not worry about being an expert in this. You could just play these videos. And these are also available on the State Library's YouTube channel as well. Also on the website, there are just some other resources, just maybe a good reference tool to let other library staff know about. This goes beyond the Talking Book program itself. This may, you can see I have information on Learning Ally, about the textbooks. So just some good referral information. A lot of these organizations do serve as clearinghouses for general information on resources for people with disabilities. Some of these organizations do provide direct service. National Federation for the Blind does have chapters in most states. They also provide a service called Newsline, which is an over-the-phone audio newspaper and magazine and job listing resource. So I invite you to review some of these websites, see what they provide, but a good place again to steer folks toward if they come in and say, my mother's losing her vision and we don't know how to help her. These are all great resources, as well as the Talking Book program for library lovers and lifelong readers who can no longer read standard print. At the end of the month, the State Library is going to be sending out some promotional material, not just talking book stuff, but some other material that I don't recall offhand. And included in that will be this brochure and some additional resources on the Talking Book program. I'm hoping to get those videos that I just showed you on a CD, so that if you were doing an outreach presentation at a place that didn't have internet access, you could have those available on CD. And this brochure will also be available. We're sending that out, as I said, to libraries, so if there are those of you watching that aren't in a library and would be interested in this print material to have available for your clients or patrons, please do contact me at the State Library. Again, realizing that I don't have the State Library information in front of me. As I said, I'll pull that up here in a moment. So this is just an informational brochure on the program. Again, everything that I've talked about, it's just a bifold brochure. Talks about the equipment, talks about what kind of books are available, and has those contacts for services for the visually impaired and the Utah State Library. I will go ahead and pull up my contact info since I didn't have that. But at this time, I would ask if there are any questions to please go ahead, you can type those in the chat box, and I will share those with the group and answer them. I'll give you a few moments if you have any questions. And there is my contact info, local phone number, and my website and my email rather, if you want to contact me directly on anything. Sara.francis@wyo.gov. Again, that website is wyomingtalkingbooks.org. So I do invite you to review that information, direct patrons toward there. Oh, I do have one question coming in. Let me get that opened up here. Oh, very good question. Are there descriptive videos available anywhere for the blind? Very good question. Again, I remember I talked about the pardon me, the program. The library has recorded books, Braille books, large print books, and magazines. Descriptive videos is a smaller part of the collection, and let me actually go to Utah's website, because again, that will be the library for the patron who signs up for this service. And offhand, descriptive videos. Okay. So my understanding is, I'm not sure where they're at in making DVDs in a descriptive format. I know they're out there, but I don't know, and that's a question that I should ask the folks in Utah. I don't know if they have those available in their collection. So these are still VHS materials, but this is kind of an old picture, so it shows a lot of like old classics, but they do get new videos, and they're the primary distributor, if it's something that you would be interested in collecting in your own library, is WGBH, which is the PBS affiliate out of Boston, and they again, my understanding, are the primary distributor and manufacturer of descriptive videos. And what they are is just every, any movie that you and I have watched with a narration. So, of course, someone with low vision can hear who is not hard of hearing, can hear the dialogue occurring in a movie and even the music, but there's always those long dramatic pauses or those openings and pieces with silence, and so the narrator will be describing an expression on the actor's face, will be describing the scene, etc. So this makes the movie more enjoyable for someone with low vision. I know it's a fairly small collection, but that is available to patrons of this service, and again, I'm not sure about what's available in DVD. And I kind of just glossed over, I didn't really go into, but once, I mentioned that patrons can, order their books online or by way of the phone, and a variety of different ways to get their materials. But there is an online catalog comparable to OPACs in our public libraries and school libraries, and so there are ways to do just general searching, or just search for videos, or just search for Braille. So those same sort of limiters that you would have in a standard library catalog as well. Good question, thank you. Well, it doesn't look like there's any other questions, so I thank you for your time this morning. I know it was a little all over the map, so I apologize for that. Again, I do know that some of this is review for some of you out there, but my biggest hope is that you take this information, ask me if you have any questions, direct patrons to this website, to the application, and get them set up, because it's a great service. It's free. Once everything is set up, it's so easy. And to just, at the very least, incorporate a mention of this program into your outreach efforts and when you're working with certain populations in our community. So thank you very much. If you know of other staff members that were interested in this program, it will be archived on the State Library website and our new YouTube channel later this afternoon. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.